All right. Good afternoon, everybody. This is going to try and get this kicked off right on time, as I know everybody's busy working from home and trying to manage their new lives here as we go through these unprecedented times. My name is Jeff Baus, and I'm the CEO with Groom Industrial. We're going to provide a presentation here today regarding the who, what, where, when, and how of disinfecting your facilities. And so the webinar organization is going to look like this. We're going to go through how and when, be about a 30-minute presentation followed by about a 15-minute Q&A. Down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button. You can submit questions throughout the presentation if you would like, and I'll come back on at the end and provide some back and forth on the Q&A and provide you some answers. And we also are recording this. So we will send out an mass email to everybody when this is all done, so you can pass it along to other folks and go back and re-review it if you'd like. Quick tidbit, I'm the CEO of Groom Industrial. I've been in the industrial sector for about 20 years now. Please ignore the photo. It's a bad picture of me. But for about 20 years, recently took over as CEO of Groom Industrial. We service a broad range of customers here. So we got a lot of different folks on the line today. We've got folks in the private aviation industry. We've got folks in the pharmaceutical industry. We've got a lot of power generation folks on the call today, as well as a bunch of people in heavy manufacturing, as well as petrochem and refinery. So I saw a lot of the names pop up. A lot of folks I've met and spoken with and dealt business with for many years now, and we welcome everybody onto the call. Also talking today will be Steve Houghton. He's been in the industrial sector for more than 15 years. He's our sales manager, and a lot of you folks have also come in contact with him over the last few years. Also talking today will be my EH&S officer, Paul Feldner. He's been with Groom for several years, has a lot of experience in the industrial sector as well as with OSHA. So as we get things kicked off, a couple things I want to make sure that we talk about and are, we focus on in these unprecedented times, I think, is the safety and morale of employees. I think we're all dealing with sort of trying to manage that fear factor of employees that we've never, ever had to deal with before. And also, a lot of us are working in maintenance outages at heavy manufacturing or outages at power plants, and also turnarounds, in the petrochem and refinery space. And as we go through these times, I think the other thing to kind of take into account is sort of the safety and morale of outside contractors. I think a lot of those guys, I know from my experience and my employees, that fear factor is really there. And so what are we doing as companies out there to try and, keep, safety at the forefront and keep people safe from being exposed to this virus, and, keeping their morale up and keeping them to wanting to continue to come to work. And I think a big piece of that in the industries that we all work in is sort of, how do we also then successfully manage outages and turnarounds, as well as regular maintenance items within a plant when you bring in outside contractors. And I think for me, disinfecting is a huge item. Do people feel safe coming to work at your facility? Do your own employees feel safe coming to work? Do they feel like you're doing everything in your power to keep them safe at work? And disinfecting your facilities, and we're talking about, porta-johns, hand wash stations, outside job trailers, for the power gen guys, some lockout, tagout trailers, and the petrochem and refinery guys. How about, locker rooms and common space areas inside the facility, conference room, offices, control rooms for a lot of your folks? And are we doing our best to keep those spaces clean? And those are the items to me that we need to kind of focus on from a disinfecting perspective. We're also going to talk a little bit about cross-contamination. So, a lot of you guys might be having your regular cleaning folks come in, or, and let me start off by saying this as well, is I don't care, and this presentation isn't about using Groom to provide disinfecting services at your facilities. This is about, I think all of us trying to get through these unprecedented times, and how do we keep people safe? So whether you use Groom or use somebody else, doesn't really matter to me. But cross-contamination is a big thing. So the people that you bring in to do your disinfecting, Are they wearing full face respirators? Are they wearing Tyvek suits? Are they wearing latex gloves? Are they helping ensure that they don't bring the virus into your facility, as well as protect themselves from a facility that maybe has had an outbreak? So those are things to think about. Also, we perform a selective cleaning, which is, we spray everything down, we let it soak, we then hand wipe everything off. And a lot of folks have come to me and said, well, what about fogging? And in order to fog something correctly, you have to completely seal off the room. And when you do that, all your papers, what we've seen from a lot of customers is all the papers in all the offices and everywhere in the facility are all saturated and soaked and need to be thrown in the garbage. And also, a lot of computers have failed because of it, keyboards, mice, and electronics and things like that. So that's something to think about. We work in a lot of various industries, and I wanted to provide a couple of examples of what we've seen in the last 2 weeks as we go through this coronavirus outbreak. We had one facility we were called to work in because three of their 9 operators, a third of their workforce in the control room came down with the virus. And all the mechanics at that facility also walked off site because they didn't feel safe. And we were brought in to kind of, disinfect the facility. And then we were one time, but then we come into that facility every other day and disinfect it so that their folks feel safe and comfortable coming into work. We also had another plant we were working at where one of the operators said he was in contact with somebody that had the virus, and word got out to all the contractors working the outage. And what actually happened in that case was the entire night shift crew of guys that were working on the turbine walked off the site and refused to come back to work because they didn't feel safe there. And I think that's where we're going to come back to a lot is, do people feel comfortable? Do they feel safe coming to work? And we're in all the folks on this call, we're all essential services providers. We're all infrastructure folks. And us staying, operational and continuing to provide what we do to the public is super important. So I think, we can't overlook the need to make people feel comfortable coming to work. So I'm going to hand this off to Steve now. We'll come back at the end for a Q&A session. I thank everybody again for their time, and I'll pass it off to Steve now.
Thank you, Jeff, for the introduction, and thank you for everyone taking time out of your busy days to take part in this call. We've got folks from many different industries that are different specialty divisions service, anywhere from power gen and refining to hangar door, food and bev, and pharma. So we've got people with in all kinds of different industries with different issues. But at the end of the day, we're all in this fight kind of together. So, we've had the opportunity over the past 50 years to work in your facilities in different respects through our specialty divisions. So it's great that we're already familiar in many cases with how you operate and your essential business factors. We've received a lot of different questions from you all throughout this outbreak. But there's been one underlying tone, one underlying question, and it's, yeah, we do that too. No matter what specialty division services you, and we work in a power plant or on a hangar door, we also have a very successful industrial cleaning division for the past 50 plus years. So that's what we'll be talking about primarily today. Another main question that we get is, what term do I use? I get bids and RFQs and emails and phone calls all day, every day for the past month during this outbreak, and saying, hey, I need a cleaning, I need a decontamination. It's very important that we make sure that we're using the right terminology here to attack the COVID disinfection need. I'm going to run through a few of these definitions very quickly so we're all on the same page. Cleaning, it's basically the physical removal of pollutants. We're trying to wash away the pollutants. There's no particular target microorganism with this method. We're looking to remove a pollutant, which would be known more as dirt or grease or some kind of processed material on your equipment. Sanitizing, in sanitizing technology or method, we're looking to reduce 99% plus of your microbial population on a surface. In a sanitizing application, there's typically not a specific target microbe. The focus in sanitizing is more speed to kill. Most often a sanitizer is alcohol based, which evaporates quickly. This does show a lot of effectiveness in killing a lot of microbes, but limits itself to long-term effectiveness and 100% kill, since it cannot sit on the substrate for very long. A disinfecting application is really what we're going to talk about today. It focuses on the destruction of 100% of the claimed microorganism or pathogen. A claimed microorganism or pathogen will be shown in the EPA approval guide. Every pathogen has a specific list of chemicals or agents that are effective in disinfecting or deconstructing that cell. Also very important to understand that the EPA approval supersedes the CDC approval. Anything that's listed as a disinfectant is listed as such by the EPA, which is the governing agency in that area. If you see anything with a CDC approval for disinfection, that's merely a reference or recommendation of the EPA approved list. Sterilizing, you're going to see this more often in clean room environment, medical and surgical environment, not so much in any of your applications. But the focus here is to kill 100% of all organisms, not just a claimed organism. And finally, decontamination. This would be a proper term, and I've seen this on large bids where we're not just focusing on cleaning or disinfection, but both. We're looking to remove any kind of infected material. If you look at the EPA list of approved items to kill any specific pathogen, but COVID specifically, these are the three main active ingredients in the solutions or disinfectants. I'll go through them very quickly, and I am no chemist, so the drawings and breakouts of these chemical structures don't mean much to me, but understanding their uses and application is. So don't be scared. The first is quaternary ammonium, also known as quat in many solutions. It's very common and very versatile. It's got a 2-minute exposure time to be effective against coronavirus. We use it actually in an RTU product, which means ready to use. You'll see that acronym a lot. And we use it for this purpose in an RTU because it's in a controlled dilution. This allows us to be very effective and control one more variable very easily to be effective as a disinfectant service. Sodium hypochlorite, more well known as bleach. If you could say that quickly a few times, you're better than I am. But we know bleach well. It's very effective and common. Everyone has this in their households and has used it. And we all know what the potential downsides could be. It smells. Use around porous materials such as carpet or seat cushions, it could bleach them if it's in a stronger mix ratio. And finally, metal reactivity. A sodium hypochlorite could potentially react to certain metals. So if you've got sensitive process equipment in your facility, it's something to consider. Finally, hydrogen peroxide, again, very common household name. This is commonly used in foggers, which I'll touch on that technology a little bit later. One thing to consider as a downside here is it does have bleaching potential, and it also needs a long residence time to be effective in that application. Now, we've all seen the news and different videos of cool techniques on social media. I want to go through a few of these to identify strengths and weaknesses of each technology. UV light is one of them. I think it's It's cool looking, but there's four main variables to consider here. This is going to be more effective in a controlled environment, like a kitchen or something to that effect. You need to consider angle of incidence or the angle of light to the substrate, the distance to the surface, the intensity of the light, and duration of exposure. All these factors directly impact whether or not a UV light application will be effective in the disinfection application. Steam fog. To be quite honest, I think that this looks like one of the cooler technologies out there. We've all seen it on the news. People, walking around shooting steam on stuff. Desks, workstations, etc. There's two very important things to consider with this technology, and the reason that we do not utilize it. You need a 140 Fahrenheit temperature at 30 minutes plus to be effective in disinfecting or breaking down a corona cell. If you see anyone just walking by a workstation spraying fog on it, high and by, it's not effective in that application. Also, it's EPA approved, but only after a surface is clean. So this is a two-step process that is a little bit time consuming to be effective. Two items that I'll touch on very quickly: ozone generator and ionizer. Neither one of these are EPA approved against coronavirus. They're effective mainly in deodorizing by removing fungus spores, that kind of thing, and also air cleaning by removing small dust particles and that kind of thing. But these are not technologies to consider against coronavirus. A very simple technology, soap scrub or soap wash. It's great for cleaning. Real obvious downside, a lot of you are looking to disinfect office environments. You need a lot of water to be effective in a soap scrub to wash it down. So you could be effective by utilizing a soap scrub that has a disinfectant solution in it in a washroom or production area that can sustain a lot of water. But as a versatile option, it's not the best one. Chemical fog also kind of looks cool when you see these used, in the news and that kind of stuff. It's not as set it and forget it as you might think. Many of these units are limited to a 10,000 cubic foot application. So, you might need a few of these depending on the size of your space. It's also very important that the atmosphere and space needs to be controlled. If you can't close off an area, you'll need to do that by tenting it. This solution is basically effective by saturating the items universally in an area. So if you've got, a lot of papers, office equipment, electronics, there are some factors to consider long-term. You might be damaging some things in the long run. The chemical spray, very simple technology. It's direct, it's manageable. You can clean and disinfect with the right solution. And you can return fast to the space depending on the EPA approved disinfectant that you use. These are all reasons that we utilize this particular technology, and that we're relying on the EPA approval and the expertise of our field crew and technicians to complete a cleaning and disinfection properly for you. Another question that we get a lot is why? Why should I go professional? Why not just, use my current cleaning crew or the maintenance person who might have some extra time on their hands? First question to ask yourself is, are you looking to clean or disinfect? If you're looking to disinfect, does your crew have the right product, the right clean disinfectant agent, the right PPE, and first and foremost, the right experience? Have you considered reducing the chance of cross-contamination? And finally, are you looking to offer peace of mind for your employees? Not just, your employees to return to work now, but are you considering how your employees might feel in 2 months to return to work? Peace of mind for management and ownership. A lot of the folks on this webinar right now. And finally, community and shareholders. As essential businesses, we all need to be responsible not only in keeping our businesses running and moving forward, but also being the pillars of responsibility in our communities. It's very important that we all kind of are proactive and make sure that we're out ahead of this and are setting an example in our communities. Finally, when to disinfect. This slide kind of steals my thunder, but the only answer is to do it now. We all on this webinar have the opportunity and privilege mostly of being able to work from home. But in terms of keeping our businesses up and running, that's not necessarily the case for our entire employee pool. I don't know anyone who could feel safe at a facility that has not been disinfected. That's just, the blunt and honest truth. We're all very privy to, what the OSHA regulation is, and it's been well publicized through this whole pandemic that OSHA does not mandate employees to report to work if an employer is not doing everything in their power to keep that environment safe. So some things to consider and factors that might impact an environment being safer. If someone is already sick, are you waiting for someone to get sick, or are you being proactive about it? Do you have an outage planned or visitors scheduled? Increased volume and chance for cross-contamination are factors to definitely consider. How often do I disinfect? This is even more, probably the most hard-hitting question. And the answer is, this is not a one-time fix. If we get called in to disinfect, or you disinfect your facility because someone was sick and sent home, how many people did they contaminate or infect afterwards? We can disinfect, but the second that an infected person walks back onto your campus, into your facility, that space now needs to be disinfected again. So developing a maintenance plan is very important. Working with a contractor or developing a plan yourself to accommodate to shift changes, to staggered work schedules, to identify high traffic areas. These change. Your high traffic areas change, whether you have an outage, a turnaround, or scheduled maintenance, depending on what's being worked on and where the contractors are. It needs to be a flexible solution. And finally, shift duration. Do you need someone for 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 or 12 hours? These are all things to consider in order to be effective, and multiple variables to drive home. It's very important for us as we're looking at the changing variables of what might be infected, is looking at the funnel points or the pinch points of where people might congregate, and make sure that we're touching on those heavily traveled areas even more often. So as I mentioned before, a disinfected surface is only disinfected until the next person walks by. It's very important to understand traffic flow and what might change with that variable, and all the way down to the nitty-gritty, job trailers and porta potties. It's an essential part of our business. Safety is a cornerstone of our company at Groom. That's what makes me feel safe and prideful to work at Groom, as I know that all of you have that similar culture in your companies, and that's why another reason that we enjoy working with you all. You might notice our folks walking across your campus, your facility, with a shirt that says "Don't turn your back on safety." Coronavirus or not, it's something to consider. But as I mentioned, our folks have been showing up to work to clean your catalyst, or do vac truck work, or do some painting work at your facilities for 50 plus years. They show up in a Tyvek suit, nitro gloves, and a respirator. Nothing's changed with the COVID, but there is a stigma behind it that it's very important for us to communicate to you and make sure that your folks understand. I guess my question to you would be, would your employees feel safer if we showed up in sweatpants and a baseball cap? It's very important for us to not just protect you, but also protect ourselves from cross-contamination in the process itself. So in regards to safety, I do want to pass the torch to Paul Feldner, who is our EHS officer, and go over some of the basic processes that we do to make sure that we employ this technology safely. Paul?
Thank you, Steve. So as Steve mentioned, it's our responsibility to make sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to provide our employees with a safe and healthy workplace at all times. So for us, it's extremely important to take the safety precautions necessary in order to be able to do this cleaning process or disinfecting process for you. So with everything that was said, none of this can get done without considering safety and the need to prepare and properly train our crews for this disinfecting process. So I'd like to go over how we do this process, how it should be done, and everything that it necessitates. So starting from the top, a pre-job walk down is something that we conduct. It's a meaningful conversation between crew and clients to target and mitigate hazards and to review the work area to make sure that we're going to target everything that needs to be disinfected. We would also do a document and chemical review. This is comprised of a review of the chemical SDS between the crew, toolbox talk, and also a JSA or job safety analysis. Additionally, we would do a personal protective equipment review. This covers the review of full face respirators, which we are quantitatively fit tested to use. We receive a medical clearance to use respirators annually. We cover Tyvek coveralls, nitrile gloves, and the use of rubber boot covers as well. I'd like to reiterate that we're not only protecting our employees by using this PPE during the disinfecting process, but also the clients from the cross-contamination factor. Moving down to PPE job preparation, we want to ensure that our crews are wearing their PPE properly, so they receive training on that as well. In the cleaning procedures, disinfecting process, we would be targeting or training our crews on the areas to target, which would be reviewed during the pre-job walk down, the handling of disinfectant and using the spray bottles during the cleaning process. And in this process, there would be a final review of the areas with the clients to ensure that we've properly covered everything that needed to be disinfected. And finally, personal protective equipment removal. This would cover the necessary precautions for our crews when they're derobing once the work process has concluded. So in this, I have a full training outline available for anyone who would like to request that, which is a detailed breakdown of all of the training that's in addition to this disinfecting training procedures.
Fantastic. Thanks, Paul. What we're going to do is let Jeff wrap the webinar up here, and then we'll do some Q&A. Jeff?
Yeah, thanks everybody. Once again, appreciate everybody's time today. I think the approach, I think the mentality, if we all kind of stay on focus here, is what are we doing to keep everybody safe during these times and keep our employees safe, I think is the biggest thing to talk about here. And I think the other approach for me as a guy that leads the company is, what are we doing our part to help everybody out? And I hope that this webinar was helpful to everybody, and regardless of what comes of it business-wise, I hope everybody got something out of it and found it useful. So I'm going to go through. I got 3 questions over here on the Q&A section. Go through these questions and answers. And if you've got any more, feel free to to populate them as I go down here. So the first question that came in was, how are folks dealing with work that does not allow for 6-foot social distancing? So what I've seen in general out there in the field from talking to all of our foremen and journeymen and everybody that's out there is that for work that doesn't allow for 6-foot social distancing, what we have done is we require all of our employees, and what we've seen from other contractors is that at a minimum, those folks are wearing Tyvek suits, nitrile gloves, and half-face respirators at a bare minimum for the folks that are sort of, can't follow that 6-foot social distancing rule. Next question here is, are plants asking contractors to provide virus mitigation plan prior to coming on site? If so, are they stipulating what must be addressed in the plan? So I haven't seen any customers or any of the plants and people that we work for require anything in any specific plan, but they do ask for a plan. I would say 75% of the facilities that we work at have asked for our plan and reviewed our plan. So I'd say that that's pretty commonplace. Next question is, are there any trainings and certifications I should ask for with a company coming in to clean? Yeah, there's a, aside from the PPE stuff that Paul, brought our attention to, PPE would be one. I would want to make sure that their employees are trained in proper PPE usage. I'd want to ensure that their employees are also trained in proper hazard communication. Are they bringing in a spray bottle that's not properly labeled for the disinfectant that they're using? And make sure they're following proper HAZCOM procedures. The other thing too is I would want to make sure that my contractor has respiratory fit testing, and make sure that their guys have pulmonary function testing and are approved and trained on proper respirator usage. And then the last thing I'd ask for is, cleaning credentials. I would want to ensure that, that these guys know what they're doing, and I want to know how long they were in business and sort of, what are their customers, and, can I talk to some of their customers to see what, how they felt about the cleaning they did, things like that. What is our waste disposal process? So when our guys are, we will disinfect our suits and everything else before we remove them and place them in the garbage. And then we'll bring that trash back to our facility, and we handle the waste disposal ourselves. All right, a lot of questions coming in, so just bear with me here. Do your respirator filters the air your crew is breathing out? Most half-face respirators have exhalation ports. We do not. We run a standard full-face respirator that's got a standard breathing port coming out of it. Can a contractor ask customers what kind of cleaning has been done to put employees at ease if someone had tested positive? Sure. Yeah, I mean, we before we go in to provide any sort of cleaning services, we want to know what the customer has done first before we get in there and provide what we're going to do. Here's another question. What areas of the U.S. states would your cleaning services most easily serve? In other words, where are your groups traveling from? Currently, I've got crew in 24 different states. We're going to probably come from a state that's neighboring yours in most cases to come in and clean your facility. In a lot of cases, we find ourselves sort of in the belt of heavy industry in the U.S. So we're all along the eastern seaboard, we're all along the Gulf Coast, and then we're all along the West Coast as well, including currently I've got some guys in Idaho, Utah, and Arizona. Next question is, when will the webinar recording be made available? That will be sent out to you immediately following this webinar, as Kevin asking that. So you'll get that here within the next 15 minutes at the latest. Is there a validation or post clean certification? Not that I'm aware of. We don't provide anything like that. I don't even know what kind of testing you would try and do to verify that. So that is not something we provide. That seems to finish up all the questions here. I'll just finally thank everybody one more time for all their time and thank my crew for all the energy they put into this. we will have this over to you shortly. And just thank everybody. I know these are unprecedented times, and we're all kind of, struggling how to get through this. And I think the best thing we can do is just try and, work on it together, just like we do on a regular basis. I got one more question popping up here before I get off here. So how often do we recommend a cleaning be done? If my suggestion is, it really depends on the facility. If you're a manufacturing facility that has round the clock employees, I would recommend doing it at every shift change. If you're running an outage at a power plant and you're running a day shift, night shift, I would recommend it at every shift change for about 4 hours. I'd say our standard cleaning on a facility, several thousand square feet, takes about 4 hours to complete. So a lot of customers were doing like 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. cleaning, and then another one from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. is normally what we're doing. I just think that you sort of have to take the stance of, you got to look at it from the perspective of, if I have people coming from home to work every day, they're potentially bringing that virus into my facility every day. Even if we take their temperature, even if we check at all this stuff, that's the fear factor. That's the problem that everybody's having. So from my perspective, it's, every time, you have new people coming into your site, that's when the disinfecting needs to be done. And it needs to be done so people can see it too. I think that's also important. So anyway, that's all I've got. I thank everybody once again for their time, and you've got our contact information. Most of you guys have my cell phone or my email address. If you want to reach out and just talk about this or anything else, I welcome the interaction, and I appreciate everybody. So thanks everybody very much, and stay safe and healthy.